used to call this presentation, "It's Never Too Late to Have a More Loving Father." Preparing for this show this evening, I think is a better title is "It's Never Too Late to Have a More Real Father." Does that make sense? Maybe not, huh?
What do you mean by real?
I told the story about my father, and I wanted to love him more. And I wasn't in touch with some of my feelings toward him because they weren't just loving. For example, my first memory of my father is what he told me when I was 50. We're walking along the Atlantic Ocean in Brooklyn, where we were both born, and he says, "Mike, I think I know why you've been so stubborn all your life. Let me tell you. When you were born, the psychologist of the time, Watson, a behavioralist, told all the parents, don't spoil your children. No, no, no. Don't hug them when they cry. Don't feed them when they're hungry. No, you want a child who knows how to get along with the discipline that society will bring him. So only feed him every 4 hours at the end of the 4th hour." And my dad said, "Mike, you would cry and scream. You're a colicky baby, but we wanted to be good parents, Mike. And so we did not feed you till the end of the 4th hour. And when Mom offered you, unfortunately it wasn't a breast, alas, so my life would have been much happier. It was a bottle. A bottle. And Mike, you refused to eat. Good for me. I don't quite understand it. There was something in that little infant baby that didn't like this. And maybe maybe I knew this wasn't the right way to do it, and I, hungry as I was, I closed my mouth. I think I'm proud of this, maybe, although I caused myself a lot of trouble for my whole life. Oh, I closed my mouth, and then my father says, "Mike, I held your hands down, and Mom force-fed milk down your throat, even though you didn't want it, because we didn't want you to die." This is my first memory. And I'm so grateful. See, I'm grateful for my dad telling me. Because he wasn't a talkative man. Many men in that generation. And so I could feel the gratitude. It is such a gift. I didn't feel, because I like to look at the positive, Charles Koran, his name. Didn't you ever think holding a child down, a little just born infant, and force feeding him, you might want to reconsider? But no. So there was, I think, an immense, helpless rage toward him too. So when I told this story last time, I emphasized my gratitude And I didn't want to be in touch with the trauma of that situation, the sadness and the anger of it.
Do you think you would have been different if you had been, your parents didn't follow the advice of Dr. Spock?
Well, Dr. Spock changed things. He was
He was the one who changed it then after that. Yeah.
in 1946,
Yeah.
but I was born in 41. During
you just...
Yeah, I guess, yes, not that my youngest brother came out any better in his life, but...
Did they treat him like...
No, they didn't do that, but
they still followed what? Did they learn anything from...
But it was a traumatic family anyway.
Did they learn anything from your experience with them?
They didn't do it to my youngest brother, Scott.
Okay. Yeah.
Who still tried to, I won't even say it, but he is not talking to either of his brothers now.
Oh.
So, even though he didn't have that experience.
Yeah.
Both my brothers hate my father for good reason, and I love him. I was very blessed. One, that he would tell me the story. I mean, that's a gift in itself. The gift does supersede the pain of it and the trauma of it, I think, if I was weighing them. You were talking about yin and yang for the show. So I love this life, being friends with people like you and being on this show with Charlie Tesh producing it, and Rob and Sarah and Joe behind the camera. I died and gone to heaven. I thought I'd be alone, and you came for the show.
Is this your idea of heaven?
Yes.
On TV for that?
Yes, with all our audience, loving all these camera people, and Charlie and Joy Chestnut is with us. She is interviewing me.
You don't think you'd run out of material?
No, I have. I have more than.
If you were in heaven forever and ever.
Oh, if I run out of material in heaven, tell me more. What does that mean?
Well, you'd eventually. Would you just keep finding new things about yourself?
Oh, in heaven?
Yeah, in heaven. For eternity, remember.
Oh, I think I'll be reborn soon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, until you're reborn, you'll be on TV.
Oh, on TV in heaven? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, sure, why not?
Okay.
So that was an answer of my attempt to have a more loving father and to love him. When I really get in touch with my feelings of sadness and anger, pain, why didn't they just give me my mother's breast? Oh, what a different life. I became a Christian, you know.
You got told.
Yes, my father's holding my hands. My Jewish father.
Yeah.
I go to the University of Chicago. Guess, studying religions, all world religions. Guess what religion I'm attracted to? Little did I know, they put that imprinted in me at the age of 1 day.
So.
And in some ways, I could emphasize that and say I'm grateful, because I like being Christian. I like believing that whatever cross we're on, we can get off of it and live happily ever after, go to heaven. So it was my father's religious education.
Okay.
Day one.
So you said that you love your father now, but you also said before that you had dark feelings about it, about your father. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And you had to learn to love your father.
I had to. I did love him when I was young. Like Mark Twain said, at 16, he was appalled to discover what a fool his father was. At 21, he was amazed at how much the old man learned in 5 years.
Yeah.
And there's some great truth to that for me. I lost my love when I was about 16, as many young boys do.
Yeah.
And then realized, wow, Charles Koran, you made me. That wasn't easy.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you how I got made. If you're interested, maybe not. No, this is a family show. We will try.
Okay. Oh. Okay.
Try to maybe. Well, nowadays people are sophisticated. So my mother is ice skating. I think in Radio City has an ice skating rink. And in those days, you didn't drop your handkerchief to find him, and there was no OK Cupid. So the best she could do was she fell on the ice, and this gentleman, my father, picks her up, and that's how they, and asks her, "Would you like to go out on a date?" And Anne says, "What would you like to do, Evelyn?" She says, "I like to bike ride." And Dad, my resourceful father, spent the week learning to bike ride, and that's how they got together, and that's how young Mikey was born.
See, that's what we have. Another thing in common is that's how my father and mother met, but they were regular skating. They weren't ice skating.
Are they met skating?
Skating, and she fell, and he picked her up. And
No!
Yeah.
No!
Here I am.
The old
fall
fall
down
out of the
and-
ice trick.
Yeah.
So,
like-
this show is a great gift to you in case you missed it. If you're looking to find your true love or your challenging love,
Go to a roller skating rink. if you
roller
can
skating
find
or
one.
ice skating.
Yeah. But then my father disappeared. He went in the Coast Guard, I think, and she didn't hear from him for a long time. And then he came back and they got married.
Oh, my father did the same.
Coast Guard?
No, but when my other second brother is born, 2 years after I am,
Yeah.
both of us, I asked my father, were we planned? He said no, but eventually we were hoping to have children.
Yeah.
So, and according to my mother, Charles Koran, my dad, I hope you're here. This is a photo of him here with my mother. And he comes to the hospital and says, "Honey," with a big smile on his face, she just has given birth to Lynn. "Honey, I've enlisted in the Navy." And she was, without talking to her, no.
Ooh. Well, did he think that she was going to protest?
It was hard if she just gave birth.
I mean, she would. Yeah. He didn't. Why didn't he tell her? Because you think? Because he knew what would happen.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But it was,
I'd like to know why.
yes. Why? Maybe he thought she would protest and he would not be able to do it,
Yeah.
which is even more sneaky and mean and sensitive.
Yeah. Huh.
And then
Cowardly.
yes, and then writes to my mother during the war, I'm not coming back to the family.
Wow.
And then writes and says, I'm going to come back for the children.
Oh my
Which
God.
is not.
Oh.
Things that don't need to be said. I'm finally learning.
Well, he did come back. Is that a
Yes.
good thing?
That was, I would have not made it just with my mother. I wouldn't have made
So
it.
he knew, you think?
I think he knew that, in those days, divorce was not common. That children needed both parents.
Mm-hmm. We still need them today, but
Yeah, very much.
then grandparents and family. Yeah. But he came back, and that was a good thing.
That was a very, very good thing. There's an old Jewish belief that if you remember people dear to you who have passed, and you remember them well, the memories are like winds or breezes I can carry their soul to a good place. So I hope for everybody who's lost fathers and everyone who has a father that this show will help us think even better of our fathers. Can I say that? Oh, that's a good hope. And I find I don't quite understand this, Joy, by getting in touch with my pain and trauma and not just trying to paint a pretty picture of him, I can love him more because it's a more real feeling than just trying to love him. That makes a lot of sense, yes? I had one show where I was talking about my father, and after I left home, my father was a fireman, I imagined an axe in my mind hitting me daily. Pow! Pow! It took me a long time. I think one therapeutic helper said, "Who's holding the axe?" It was my father.
Well,
So I have felt much of my life unwanted in that sense. And somehow my mind turns this into an axe. Because my father was a fireman. Turns it into an axe that chops off my head, from my neck often. I think he wanted, after I've asked the axe what it wants, it says, "Get out of your head and into your heart, kid." So it was.
Did that happen through therapy that you talked to your
I've learned to
head?
talk to these different parts of me.
Yeah, you did that on your own, not in therapy?
No, I had a therapeutic help doing
yeah,
that.
okay, yeah. That's good stuff. Talking to objects in your dream.
Yes, that too, yes.
Yeah.
And so I, once on one show I was doing about my growing up, I took a real axe and went, pow! 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 And that is very freeing. There's an old mantra, a boy becomes a man when he kills the father inside him.
So by killing your father, he went into your heart? Right?
When the axe off, the axe chopping my head off,
Got to your heart.
still reminds me, even to this day, to get into my heart and maybe to get in touch with my physical head and not just be. I have a song for you, Joy.
Okay.
To get out of your mind, get into your head, into your head, into your head. To get out of your mind, get into your head. That's how you get ahead.
Did you make that up?
Yes.
Oh, very good. So you talked about killing your father when you were talking about going into your heart. They're connected.
I didn't do that until now. I do that. Certainly, getting rid of my head was a message to get into my heart.
Yeah.
Killing my father, taking the action. I don't know. I need your wisdom, Joy. But killing the father. What?
Your father was holding the axe.
Yes. So taking the axe and killing him is an act of self-defense in a way, internal. Nobody's really getting hurt.
Yeah. That didn't happen in the dream, though.
No, this was just an imagination.
Yeah,
And that's freeing. So that anger isn't bottled up. It's very freeing. I might need to do it more often.
I find with my father that I didn't have a lot of good experiences with my father, but I love him because I saw his weaknesses, and I have deep compassion for him because he had just a difficult life himself, and and he's a very sad person, but I love him for that. I mean, I just love him for compassion, with compassion.
What was one of the hard things he had to deal with?
My mother.
Yes, mine too. We have a lot in common.
She had to deal with him too, though.
Yes.
Problem.
That was a hard world.
They weren't made for each other. Your parents weren't made for each other.
I'm not sure. My father remarried. But he stayed married to my mother. My father had 2 wives.
Wait, he married? He married again, or
he didn't officially? He had a common law marriage.
Okay,
so
you could get arrested.
He lived with the woman for more than 7 years in Brooklyn.
Oh, in Brooklyn.
And he cheated on her by having a secret rendezvous with my mom, and with other women too. He was pretty much.
He was a good-looking fella. Huh?
He looked like a dandy at the end, but he was happy. He said when he married the second woman, Helen, that he felt like he was coming out of a tomb. Because my mother would just criticize him mercilessly.
Yeah, there we go again.
As if that would help
Yeah.
her in any way.
Yeah, my mom did the same, yeah.
But the second marriage, she was a non-stop talker, but very interesting.
Oh, okay. At least
So he could just sit there. She would say, let's go to the movies. And my father would say, I'd rather listen to you, Helen.
Oh.
She was really interesting.
How would you talk about?
Anything.
Was she scholarly?
She was a librarian. She was a librarian.
Oh, so she was knowledgeable.
Yes.
And so she would talk about things.
Yes, people.
Ideas.
Plants, family. She had an opinion about everything, too. She was right. She once told me, Michael, you're unhappy. And I said, no, I'm not. And she said, yes, you are. And my father wouldn't say anything. It's just like in my house. He could have said, Helen, be nice to my son. No.
Were you happy?
Then I was, or thought I was.
She told you you were, and then you...
Was I happy then? I
mean,
thought I
happy.
was. I had, in my life, mass depression. Maybe she was right, even.
Yeah.
Because I was way sadder than I knew. I used to drink 6 cups of coffee a day to get through the day. So maybe in many ways she was right.
You had good. You liked her.
No, I did like her. She didn't. Some second wives, a rare second wife, takes in the children and says, "Your children are mine too." She did not do that. That was very sad. My dad didn't have either the strength or the interest to try to get her to be nicer to us.
Was she not nice, or just?
Well, my youngest brother was hurt when he was living with my father at the moment in their home in New Jersey. My father would just leave them and go to Thanksgiving at Helen's and not invite my brother. And my brother was hurt by that. So those were little things, but nothing huge.
Yeah. But she was not affectionate, or.
No, she wasn't.
And she's just more like an acquaintance or a friend.
Yeah, I loved her because my father was so happy with her.
Oh, okay.
He was really happy. He found happiness after a very painful marriage. We had what I call the tragedy of the open mouth. We would sit down to dinner. My father would do, this is the way I can feel my father's presence. He would rub his legs like this. There'd be bread on the table. He'd start eating it. and my mom would come in. This was her big event of the day. She had shopped, cleaned, cooked for the family, and he starts eating before she sits down. No appreciation, no thanks, honey, no thank you for the food or anything. And she says, Charlie, you're eating before I sit down, which is a very legitimate complaint. And he says, shut up. And she says, no. And he says, if you don't shut up, this happened once, I'm going to throw this coffee cup at you. And my brave mother says, ah. And he throws it. And she wants to fight back. And my youngest brother has to lock her in the bathroom to stop the fight.
You see, it was my mother that flung the dishes.
So we have much more similarities than we know.
Except it was my mother.
And I would tell this story because it was clever and funny too.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean by telling these stories again. That was painful to her, to the family. That was, and then to throw the cup at her.
And not be able to throw it back. She would have gone after him, really?
Yeah, she would have fought back.
She would have thrown something back at him?
Or hit him.
You sure? Yeah.
I think my brother had to lock her in the bathroom.
Okay, so yeah.
She was, so, and that was meals for us. That was what eating together as a family was.
Yeah.
So we didn't. So I could tell that story and people could laugh, including me, the tragedy of the open mouth. And I need to feel what it was like sitting at that table, for me too, let alone for my mother. I guess I can't describe the pain of wanting them to get along. It's just like, and they're doing so badly, and there's nothing I can do except feel the tension. Eating was hard. From force feeding to this, I would kind of make a little wall and eat inside the wall. Just keep everything out, which is not what eating is a communal thing for humans. So I couldn't, when I was at University of Chicago, there was one time I couldn't even eat one section of an orange. I would eat it if I wasn't in a peaceful place. It would take days for me to digest it. I would lose my energy.
So how come you didn't starve to death?
I found that I could eat sweets. And that would work.
You could starve to death.
I could go to the bakery and
your sweets worked.
I could digest sweets. So
with my family, with the fights, they had wicked fights, and I'm sure at the beginning it was very painful to watch them fighting, but after a while, after so many years, you sort of started taking score who was winning.
Oh my!
I said, "Oh, is it going, Mom?" Because after a while, it sort of didn't work anymore.
Yeah, my way of doing it.
You almost got him.
My way of doing it is try to make funny stories out of.
Yeah, humor can save your life for people.
But I need now to feel, not hide from those basic feelings I had.
The dark ones. Before the humor.
Nothing I could. Yes, and then to let that be part of the humor as we're doing now. But to not have the humor cover it.
And look down
yes,
at it,
yes. Yeah. Or let it join the humor, and so it's real.
Dark humor. You like dark humor? Do you like dark humor movies?
I think I need it for my own life. Yes.
You do watch dark humor.
What would be an example of dark humor?
Yeah, Monty Python, dark humor. But that's too. Off the top of my head.
I like Bob Newhart. Stop It. Did you ever see the?
No.
Go to when you get home. You can Google it.
Stop
It's
it.
just 6 minutes long.
Stop it.
Bob Newhart, Stop It.
Okay.
That's a bit
He
fun.
was good. Bob Newhart. Yeah, I liked his wry sense of humor. Just watched him a few days ago on the Johnny Carson show. It's very good.
Well,
Yeah. Wry sense of humor.
so let me tell you a little about at least the structure of his life.
Mm-hmm.
He grew up in a candy store. His father was a cap maker.
A what maker?
Cap.
Oh yeah.
And caps, people stopped wearing caps. And so his father bought a candy store.
Like a Scully cap.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they lived, my father lived his childhood in the back of a candy store.
Ah.
There were just 2 rooms and a kitchen.
Ah.
That's all.
That's some of my best childhood memories are in candy stores with the glass counters and the wheels, the licorice wheels that look like a record, and all those fancy candies back then, 1-cent candies.
It actually was paradise to visit.
Yes, it was.
I didn't live there, but there was all these comic books
Yeah.
and pretzels,
Yeah.
and it was just, I could just read one after another.
Comic books, yeah.
And I could have said they were worth a fortune, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I could have saved them.
Do you remember the little met that was looked shiny cups? They were supposed to be pies, and they came with little spoons and a little cherry on top, and it was
No.
really sweet.
Maybe
This
we're
was a
different.
candy store, and you just,
You're a
took the
spring
pie.
chicken compared to me.
Oh.
You're younger than I am.
Oh, they didn't have them way back.
I don't think so.
Ah.
At least I don't remember. I wasn't interested in the candy.
Oh,
I wasn't.
I'm having images of the lady behind the counter right now.
My grandmother, yes.
Maybe it was your grandmother. No, it wasn't.
So my father told his one story of childhood. He's about 10 years old, and he asked his father, who worked 7 days a week behind the candy store counter.
Yeah.
And my father says, Daddy, could I have roller skates? He's 10 years old. And his father says, Das ist ein kindische thing, something like that in Yiddish. That's a childish thing.
Yeah.
And my father was 10.
Yeah, the child.
So his father
Uh-huh.
really wasn't much at all, but he was a provider.
Yeah,
At
that's
least
important.
That was very, very
Back
important.
then, oh my goodness, yeah.
But how could my father know how to be a father since he didn't have one?
Ah.
And so we played 1,000 games of handball together. My father and I, he was a fireman, so he was home during the week.
Ah.
He just worked 2 days and 2 nights a week.
Ah.
And he would play lefty, so I could win almost all the games. We play 1,000 games of chess. He'd take off the queen when I was young, so I could win. And the hard part is when I lost, I cried. And I tried to keep it in.
Mm.
And my dear beloved mother would say, Charlie, he's crying. And unfortunately, he didn't know to say, or to fight for me and say, they didn't know that then. It's okay if he cries.
You do know what age is, because there's a developmental age where when kids just can't play games, they get upset when they lose, and that's when they start really learning the rules and that they could lose. Maybe it was when you
I think it was even 12, 13.
12, really? Ah,
So that's asking too much for him to,
yeah.
but he did play all these games.
Yeah, you were very lucky, yeah.
I would be home, I could sit next to him. When young, he would read fairy tales, and I loved them all.
Oh, you were a lucky person,
I
you.
was very lucky.
Yes.
And then he'd do my math homework with me and help me get the answers. He wanted to really teach me math.
Yeah.
And I only wanted the answers. I mean, he was in some ways, acting way. I could blame me from the moment I refused food for many of our problems.
Mm.
I couldn't talk to him straight. That was my choice again in some ways. I wanted him and Mom to get along, and I could only say, let's read this play together or talk about it where parents learn to get along. But I couldn't say, Dad, it hurts me that you and Mom aren't getting along better. I would kind of make up conversations, because he was a silent man. I'd say, Dad, do you know Jackie Robinson? And just, it wasn't genuine. It was just, can we talk? Can we connect?
My dad was silent man, but only because my mom would do all the talking.
Yes, it was very
If you got him alone, he would.
Oh, he would?
Chatter.
Oh, my.
Only I found that later on, because I was afraid of him. And so in later years, I found I was alone with him without my mother's influence there, and he chapered.
Oh, how was that?
Yeah. You know how lonely people talk? They just talk too much.
So he talked too much then?
Kind of, yeah.
I never had that challenge with my father.
No, But I was wondering if your problems with your father might have some. Do you think your mom's influence about how critical she was of him influenced you and how you felt about your father? Because I know I was very influenced by how my mother talked to my father.
So you had a less opinion of your father because of...
Oh, yeah.
No, I love.
My mom was really cruel to my father.
My mother too.
Yeah,
they were
trapped
themselves too.
They what?
The women were trapped also. My mother wanted to work. My father, she loved selling baby clothes to people. We lived in the Veterans Project after World War II. My father said, my wife doesn't work. So that was just, my mother was just trapped, being a housewife, unappreciated. It was, thank God for the 60s and the women's movement.
Yeah, my mom had some sort of social life in the city, in Brooklyn. Then they moved to Long Island.
In Brooklyn too?
Yeah, Brooklyn.
Just like me, huh?
Yeah, but then they moved to Long Island. You didn't do that.
Yes, we did. We moved to Queens.
And then she didn't have a car. She didn't know how to drive. She was totally dependent on my father. Talk about trapped.
Let's hear it for the women's movement. Yes, for all its challenges. So it was challenging to love my father and not my mother at all. My father was the good guy. She continually criticized him for being the good guy. But he would go into subways and get up.
What do you mean she criticized him for being a good guy?
You say, you're such a good guy to everybody else. Why aren't you good to me? That's what her mother said about her father, too.
So your father was a kind man?
He tried to be a good man. He did. He wasn't, my youngest brother said, anyone who got close to him would end up screaming.
Screaming?
Yep.
Why?
My father's favorite way of conversation was on the phone often. It's a bit of exaggeration, but close to the truth. I'd call up and say, "Hi, Dad." He'd say, "Hi, Mike. Thanks for calling. Keep in touch." That was about it. He liked that we were keeping in touch. He did like that. Yeah. But to talk intimately, honestly, that's why I'm so grateful he told me about the force feeding. That is one advice about women. Forgive me for this. We're 16, we're walking on Long Island Sound now at Jones Beach. And he does say this to me. He says, first he asked me, "Do you want to talk about sex?" And I punked again. I mean, if there's a person responsible for the difficulties in this relationship of father and son, I could have said yes. Instead, I said, "I know all about that, Dad." He still gives me one piece of advice. He says, "Mike, you're never responsible for the satisfaction of a woman." Which was very freeing for me. Forgive me, Joy.
But that you shouldn't try to please the woman.
He said you're not responsible for her satisfaction, which is sad, very sad. My mother was very, very disappointed. She used to tell me how disappointing their honeymoon was. So that was sad. It's very
sides to every story.
It's freeing. It was very freeing. Oh, I can be with you. I don't have to be. I can be myself. But it's a one-sided sadness.
Yeah. So that's sort of like you're not supposed to get intimate with the woman. I think if you were intimate, wanted to have an intimate sexual relationship, you would want to have a mutual pleasurable.
Yes. No, I didn't.
Yeah.
That was the opposite of that.
Yeah, that was the opposite.
Yep.
So that would sort of put a wall between your father and a woman, because
yes, it was between.
Yeah. So he never really had gotten intimate with a woman.
He did love his second wife.
You think, but he was intimate with her?
Well, he was a philanderer.
Yeah.
So he
kept the wall up. Yeah. Kept his protective forces around him.
Both women, my mother and Helen, the same week, I'm not making this up, tell me on the phone, your father can't get it up anymore. And they both say, I am not making this up, and they think it matters. He thinks it matters. They didn't care. He was still very happy with Helen.
So they were friends, your mom and Helen?
No, they didn't. No.
They were acquaintances.
No, they didn't. They only met, I think, at my wedding. And my father said to my mother, I'll give you $5,000 for a facelift that you wanted if you don't make trouble at Michael's wedding. And my mother did not make trouble.
Okay.
That's the first.
And she got her facelift?
And Helen, alas, this talkative Helen, when she met my mother, was giving my mother advice on how to meet a man. Which my mother did not
take kindly to.
Appreciate since Helen had taken away.
But she wanted that facelift, so she kept quiet.
Yes, she kept quiet, yes.
She kept quiet. And did you get the facelift?
Yes, she did. Was
she gorgeous?
No, it ruined her. I mean, here's a picture of her when they were young.
Uh-huh. Oh, beautiful, yeah.
That's my father and my mom.
Yeah. And then older?
This is when he's older, yes.
That's your father when he's older, and that's not your.
That's his mother.
That's his. Oh, that's your father's grandmother.
My grandmother.
Oh, yeah.
And this is when I was young.
Uh-huh.
I look a little twisted.
You don't have a picture after the plastic surgery, though.
Of my mother. This is not the right show for that. Next year, when I do, it's never too late to have a loving mother.
Okay.
Yes. So our last words. Well, before I get into that, my father does what fathers do, which is a great, great gift, beyond expectation, which is providing. So we always had a place to live. He gave me $4,000 to go to graduate school at the University of Chicago. When I was really hurting, and he hired me to paint their house inside and out in New Jersey, gave me $300 for it, and said, Mike, I know you want to go to Israel. I'll pay for the trip there and the trip back, which he did, and that changed my life. I was in Israel for 3 years and knew I could get home. And when I was there was a woman I had left behind in Chicago, and I wanted to get to know her better. and he lent me $400 so she could fly to Israel and visit me.
Oh.
And we had a week together, and it was very freeing to get to know her. And no, I didn't really want to make a life with her, even though I had a fantasy. So these are incredible gifts.
Yes.
He paid $100 a week. It was for me to see a therapist 3 times a week when I was in Israel, because American money was worth a lot more than Israeli money. So it was continually caring for me. It was a strange care. He wanted me to be free. He really, really wanted his son to be free. When I decided I wanted to be a Catholic, remember I was given my religious education, because there was this Jewish boy on the cross, and he got off of it and lived happily ever after. Yeah. And that was a very attractive. In all my trauma, I could go there, and it was good that I was suffering, and I would eventually get off the cross. And so I say, Dad, I want to be a Catholic. I tell him this after Len, I, and my mother and father go see Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Oh.
A play about our family. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I gave you a headache.
It was about our family. So it was, and then we're walking back. We had a good time. We saw our lives on the stage.
Yeah.
And then, for better and worse, I say, Dad, I want to become a Catholic. And it really hurts him. And he tells me, why don't you just do that and believe it? You don't have to become. You don't have to go through a ritual. That's not important. I said, Dad, I have to be who I am. He goes into his room for 7 days. This is a Jewish tradition called sitting Shiva. He goes into his room, but he was not doing it consciously. Doesn't talk to anyone. Comes out on New Year's Eve because friends are visiting, fireman friends. We talk about it together. He says, guess what, my son is, and they try to talk me out of it. But he never, never, never tells me not to do it. He really wants his son free. The same when I tell him I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to study philosophy, which makes no sense to a practical father. He does not tell me not to. Even pays for me to go to University of Chicago to study philosophy.
So what would you have wanted from your father that you didn't get from him?
I think I could now see I could have done it myself. I could have, I'll tell you one example. We're going shopping for a sport coat for me. I'm about 18. And we look in the mirrors, of course, to see. And I say, Dad, I think I'm ugly. And he does what his mother used to do to him. No, don't talk that way. I could have said, Dad, I want to talk to you about how ugly I feel. I really do. And maybe, it was very hard for him, but maybe at least give it a chance. We could have had some real talk, like when he told me why I was so stubborn. So I would have really loved honest, open conversation.
Yeah, that was his problem, is not talking enough. He was a quiet man, and he didn't. That was the problem everybody had with him.
And that was the generation.
Yeah.
His was more unusual. He would visit Newton about 10 years before, maybe 5 years before he died. Call me up, I'm living in Cambridge. Hi, Mike, I'm in Newton with Helen. We'll come over and visit tomorrow. I said, great, Dad. Wanting that connection. Calls me out the following morning, we're not coming. And
I don't like that.
And You never can trust anything I say to you unless it's about money.
Oh boy.
Which is just strange.
God, money.
And then for the rest of his life, he said, I owe you a visit. So he obviously thought about that. But that's a strange thing to say.
Don't trust your phone, Father. Is that about money?
I don't understand.
Say, Papa, if you come visit me, I'll give you $10.
Oh, wow.
Then he'd come. See?
He was, well, he wasn't so generous about it. He had a lot of money. I was so very grateful for the inheritance. But
it's funny, you wanted to become Catholic, and I wanted to be Jewish. So.
Wow, this is very. You were brought up Catholic?
Yeah.
I had we were brought up with no religion. My father says.
Well, I didn't really go to church. No.
And now we're both part of the Sufi community.
Yeah.
Which thinks God is everything and everywhere, and all the traditions are true, right? All of them. Jews, Christians, Muslims, Native Americans, Taoists, Hindus, Buddhists, all on the same path, talking about the same unity that we're all aiming for. When we were in Jerusalem, my father came to visit me when I was in Israel. Remember, he had paid for the trip. Comes and visits. Digging in an archaeological site near the Wailing Wall. We're digging up earth that's 2,000 years old, looking for coins. And I'm very excited he's joining me. And I say, Dad, come, you can push the wheelbarrow with all this ancient dirt in it. And for some reason, at that moment, he says, I don't want to be your father anymore. I think we have 5 more minutes, is that right? Yes, thank you.
Or she's saying, how?
He says, I don't want to be your father anymore. I can understand that. He would like to be friends.
Oh, I thought you'd done something.
No, I understand. He didn't like, I heard someone else.
He wanted to be your friends. He was giving you a compliment, sort of. He wanted to.
But he didn't want that pressure of having, somehow I would say, Dad, you want to push, maybe he didn't want to push the wheelbarrow then.
But maybe he was giving you a compliment and he wanted to be friends with you and he liked you. And like you pick your friends, you don't pick your family. So he's picking you out as a friend. Maybe that's what he was doing.
I love what you say. I think I'm loving him more just hearing this. Now, why would someone say you can't trust? I know he felt bad that he didn't visit me.
Yeah.
My guess is that Helen said, I don't want to go. And he didn't. He wasn't good at standing. He was good at fighting with my mother, but standing up.
Yeah.
Is a different story.
Yeah.
And why would he add that? He probably felt bad. He could have said, I'm sorry, Helen can't.
Yeah.
Why did he have to add that? What did that mean? Why would anyone say that to anyone? You can only trust me. You can't trust anything I say to you. And it's nice that he added the second part, unless it's about money.
Poor self-image.
Tell me more.
Well, after all, your mother gave it to him in spades, right, and criticized him all the time. And maybe some of it took heart, and if you're told something often enough, it happens. You become that. You believe it. Maybe
he believed that he wasn't.
Whatever your mom told him.
Told him.
After a while, you hear it so much.
And yet he could be trusted with money.
And she trusted him with money.
No, he didn't. He was totally. He told my mother before he was dying that all the money was jointly held. And my dear mom is investigating, looking in his drawers when he's visiting Helen, and discovers it's not. And she tells him, "You told me it was jointly held, and it's not." And he changes it so it's jointly held. So when he dies, the money does go to my mother and eventually to me and my brothers.
How did that? If